He was still a virgin at 40, until a giant Apache girl asked to stay in his cabin for the night. The snow fell hard against the wooden beams as the quiet rancher opened the door, expecting only wind and darkness. But there she stood, a towering Apache woman, skin bruised by the cold, breath shaking in the moonlight. She didn't ask for food or shelter, only a place to stay, just for one night. Yet the look in her eyes carried a danger he didn't understand. And when she stepped inside, the mountains seemed to hold their breath. Why would a woman like her come to a man who had never known a touch in his life? And what truth was she running from in the dead of winter? The wind slammed against the cabin walls with the force of a restless spirit, rattling the shutters as a lonely rancher pushed another log into the fire. The flame hissed, spitting sparks across the floorboards. Outside, the mountains rose like dark giants, their peaks swallowed by a storm that had rolled in faster than any he had seen that winter. He reached for his coat, ready to secure the barn door before the blizzard thickened, when a heavy knock thudded against the wood behind him. A single knock, slow, measured, too calm for a traveler caught in the storm. He froze, hand hovering above the latch. The ranch sat miles from town, no paths leading to it except those only hunters or desperate souls would try to follow in such weather. Another knock came, softer, almost pleading. He opened the door, only a crack, and cold air knifed past him. A giant Apache girl stood there, shoulders broad, wrapped in a thin blanket soaked with snow. Her breath rose in clouds, her dark hair plastered to her skin, her eyes steady but tired. She did not step forward. She did not bow. She simply lifted her chin and whispered, voice rough from cold, "Just one night." He swallowed hard. The storm roared behind her, pushing her toward him. Instinct moved faster than thought. He stepped aside and let her in, pulling the door shut before the wind could swallow the room. She stood near the fire without touching it, the flames flickering over her tall figure. He noticed the trembling in her hands, the way her boots were ripped, the faint marks at her wrists as if she had been bound. He offered her a blanket, a gesture of care, the first warmth she'd felt in days. But the moment he set it on her shoulders, a distant sound broke through the storm, a muffled horn, low and slow, drifting from the valley below. She stiffened. He felt his stomach twist. That sound did not belong to weather. It belonged to riders. He turned toward the window, but the swirling snow hid everything. Behind him, the Apache girl whispered, almost too soft to hear, "They're coming." A shadow passed across the firelight, and the cabin walls creaked as if bracing for something far worse than wind. The cabin felt smaller with her inside it, as if the timber walls had drawn closer to listen. The giant Apache girl stood near the fire, steam rising from her blanket, as the heat fought the cold still clinging to her. The rancher tried to steady his breath. He'd lived years without a soul crossing his path, years of silence, chores, and the heavy weight of being a man who had never been touched, never been wanted, never been chosen. Now a stranger stood in his home, taller than him, stronger than him, and clearly frightened of something drifting through the storm outside. He cleared his throat. "You're hurt?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes moved to the window, watching the snow slam against the glass as if expecting a face to appear at any moment. Finally, she shook her head. "Not hurt, just cold." He nodded, unsure what else to say. He had no experience with women, let alone ones who walked into a storm alone, let alone ones whose presence felt like thunder waiting to drop. He gestured toward the table. "Sit. Warm yourself." She hesitated. Then, slowly, she lowered herself onto the wooden bench. The seat creaked under her weight. He set a tin mug in front of her, filling it with warm water and a pinch of herbs he used in winter. She wrapped her huge hands around the metal, staring at the rising steam. "Why were you out there?" he asked softly. She took a small sip, eyes never leaving the window. "Needed shelter." He waited, hoping she'd say more, but she didn't. She wasn't hiding her words, she simply didn't give them easily. He respected that. Silence wasn't foreign to him. Silence had been his only companion for most of his life. A gust of wind shook the cabin. The horn sounded again, this time closer. The rancher stiffened. "That sound, and who is it?" The giant girl didn't blink. Men! What kind? Her jaw clenched. The kind who take... He felt a chill crawl up his spine. She set the mug down gently, though her hands trembled. I walked away, she said. They don't like when someone walks away. He swallowed. Were you with them by choice? No, she said. Never. Her voice broke slightly on the last word, but she straightened her shoulders, pushing the emotion back down as if she'd been trained her whole life to hide it. He moved closer to the fire, pretending to warm his hands, even though his palms were already sweating. Every instinct in him screamed that she needed help, but another part, the part that had been alone for 4 decades, whispered fear. He had no experience fighting men, no experience protecting someone, no experience with anything except cutting wood, feeding animals and keeping to himself. Why my cabin? He asked. She looked at him for the first time, really looked. Her gaze was deep, steady, and strangely gentle. Because you opened the door. He felt the word strike something buried inside him, something that believed he had nothing to offer the world. Anyone would have, he muttered. She shook her head once. Not anyone. A heavy silence settled between them. He turned toward the fire, unsure how to handle the warmth rising in his chest. No woman had ever spoken to him with gratitude before. No woman had ever looked at him as if he mattered. Suddenly, the horses outside snorted and stomped, nervous. The girl leaned forward fast. They're close. The rancher stepped to the window and peeked outside, but the storm swallowed the land so completely that even the nearest trees looked like ghosts. He could see nothing, yet he felt the danger pressing closer, carried on the wind like a warning. A loud thud hit the cabin wall, rattling the floor beneath them. He jumped back. What was that? The girl rose in one smooth, powerful motion. A signal they found the tracks. He stared at her. What do we do? She stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. You don't have to do anything. I will leave. They want me, not you. His heart slammed in his chest. He had never protected anyone, never had a chance to, never been needed, but looking at her, cold, exhausted, hunted, something inside him refused to let her walk back into the storm. He shook his head. You can't go out there. I must, she insisted. You are not a fighter. He opened his mouth, then closed it. She was right. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even experienced in the simplest ways of life. But he also wasn't cruel. I'm not letting you step into danger alone, he said quietly. She stared at him with a mixture of confusion and respect, as if unsure why a man like him would say such a thing. Another thud hit the wall, louder this time. Snow drifted from the ceiling beams. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They're at the barn. His breath caught. The flame flickered violently. The horses whinnied again. Boots crunched outside, slow and deliberate. The girl's eyes hardened. It's too late. And then came a knock, soft, polite, unnatural for the deadly cold outside. A man's voice followed, calm as still water. Open the door. The rancher stood frozen, staring at the door as the polite knock echoed again. Too gentle for a stranger lost in a storm, too calm for a harmless traveler. The giant Apache girl stepped closer to him, her breath slow and controlled, like someone preparing for a blow they could not avoid. The knock came a third time. Open the door, the voice repeated. We mean no trouble. The rancher whispered. They don't sound angry. She shook her head. That's the danger. He swallowed. What do they want? Her answer was quiet, but sharp. Me? A gust of wind rattled the shutters. Snow slid down the roof in heavy sheets. The rancher's hands shook, but he forced himself to breathe. Should I speak? No, she whispered. Your voice tells them everything. What do you mean? They will hear fear. They hunt fear. The knock returned, firmer this time. The rancher looked around the small cabin. Nowhere to hide, no back exit, only 4 log walls, 1 fireplace, and the storm pressing all around them like a trap. He stepped toward the girl. Sit by the fire, he whispered. If they break in, You'll do nothing, she said. You must stay alive. I can't just... You must, she repeated. You opened your door. That makes you kind, not a fighter. The words stung, though she didn't mean them to. For 40 years, he'd believed he was a man of no worth. And now, when someone needed him most, the truth felt carved into him like cold stone. A shadow moved past the window. Another followed. Boots crunched in the snow. 2 men, she murmured. Maybe 3. The rancher's voice trembled. How do you know? She tilted her head, listening. Wait. Steps. Their pattern. He stared at her, realizing she sensed things he could never perceive. Can you talk to them? If I speak, she said softly, they will know I'm inside, and they will force their way in. A heavy fist hit the door. No more polite knock. Open up, a deeper voice yelled. Storm's getting bad. The rancher jumped. The girl steadied him with a single hand against his arm. Her touch was strong and warm. Even in all the terror, he felt it. No woman had ever touched him like that. He whispered, What should I do? Wait, she said, but the men outside weren't waiting. A latch clicked. Someone tested the door. Locked, a voice growled. He's home. Smoke in the chimney. Another voice joined. Cabin's small. Tracks lead straight here. She went inside. The rancher's breath hitched. They know. The girl's jaw tightened. Yes, a shove rattled the frame. Open the door, the voice barked. We know she's with you. We won't hurt the woman if she comes out. The rancher felt a sick twist in his stomach. That's a lie, isn't it? Yes, she said. He stepped between her and the door. Then they're not getting you. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in surprise. You cannot fight them. Maybe not, he said, voice shaking, but I can stand. For the first time, something like respect flickered in her gaze, or maybe sorrow. Outside, the men argued. She's injured, one said. Don't matter, another replied. She belongs to the one who paid. The rancher felt heat rise in his chest. You were sold. She looked away. I was taken. By them. No, she said. By someone worse. Another slam hit the door, harder. Snow shook loose from the rafters. The rancher whispered, Do you trust me? She hesitated, just a breath, but nodded. Yes. Then stay behind me. But instead, she moved toward the fire and picked up a thick iron poker, gripping it with one hand. Her shadow stretched across the wall, towering, unbroken. A voice outside yelled, Last chance! Open the door or we break it down! The rancher's heartbeat hammered so loud, he thought the men could hear it through the wood. He felt the girl's presence beside him, solid, calm, resolute. She leaned toward him and spoke in a low whisper. When they enter, step aside. No, he whispered back, I stay with you. She shook her head. If you stand in front of me, they will kill you first. He swallowed hard. I'm not letting you face them alone. She stared at him, really stared, as if trying to understand how a man like him could speak like that. Her voice softened. Why risk yourself? He didn't know how to answer. Not with the truth, not with the loneliness he'd carried for 4 decades, not with the ache of wanting to matter to someone, anyone. He looked at her instead. Because you knocked, he said, and I opened. A silence passed between them, warm, fragile, strangely hopeful. Then, crack. The doorframe split. A boot pushed through the gap. Wind roared into the cabin. The girl raised the iron poker. The rancher grabbed the nearest lantern, and a man's face appeared through the broken wood, eyes full of hunger and recognition. There she is. The man, pushing through the fractured doorway, grinned, yellow teeth, frost on his beard, eyes flicking from the rancher to the massive Apache girl behind the fire. Snow blew in around him, swirling across the wooden floor like dust in a church aisle. Another shadow appeared behind him, then a third. The rancher's grip tightened on the lantern until his knuckles whitened. The intruder pointed, Step aside, friend. She ain't yours. The giant girl lifted the iron poker, her shoulders squared. Leave. The man chuckled. We paid for you. You paid someone else, she said. Not me. The rancher stepped forward without thinking. You're not taking her. The intruder raised a brow. You, alone? I said no, the rancher replied, though his hands trembled. A second man shoved the door fully open, splintering the wood. Snow burst inside. The 3 men entered with the confidence of wolves, approaching a trapped deer. "Move," the second man growled. "We won't warn you again." The rancher forced himself to stand firm, lantern raised. "This is my home." "And she's our property," the third man snapped. "Bought fair." "She isn't property." The intruders exchanged looks, smirking. The second one stepped closer, brushing past the rancher. "A big girl like that, worth every dollar. Now quit pretending you're something you're not." The rancher's fear twisted into anger. "She asked for shelter, and we asked for obedience," the first man replied. "Times are simple." The giant girl shifted slightly, placing herself between the rancher and the intruders. "You walk out," she warned, "or you bleed." Her voice was low, steady. Not a threat of pride, just fact. The first man pulled a rope from his coat. Last chance. He flicked it open with a practiced snap. The rancher felt panic bite the back of his throat. He whispered toward her. "Let me talk." "No," she murmured. "They don't hear words." The first man lunged. In one swift move, the giant girl slammed the iron poker into his forearm. The crack echoed through the cabin. The rope flew from his hand, landing near the hearth. He roared in pain, stumbling backward as the other two surged forward. The rancher swung the lantern instinctively. The flame burst, scattering sparks across the wooden floorboards. One of the intruders jumped back, swearing. The rancher's heart pounded, partly from terror, partly from the shock of defending anyone for the first time in his life. The second man barked, "Grab her!" But the giant girl moved like a storm breaking loose. She struck the iron poker against the table, shattering one leg. Wood flew. The injured man retreated, clutching his arm. The third intruder circled behind her. "Hold her down!" The rancher saw it too late. "Behind you!" She ducked as the man lunged. His grip slid past her shoulders. She slammed her elbow into his ribs, sending him crashing into the wall. Plates fell. The window rattled. The storm outside howled louder, as if drawn by the violence. The rancher grabbed the broken table leg, lifting it like a crude club. His voice shook. "Get out!" The second man glared at him. "You'll die for her, old fool." The rancher's throat tightened. Old fool, virgin, useless. Words he'd heard all his life. Words that shaped him. Words that broke him. But tonight, someone had knocked on his door. Someone had trusted him. Someone had needed him. He raised the club. "I'm not stepping aside." The injured man spat on the floor. "Fine." He whistled sharply. Outside, hooves shifted. Multiple horses. More men. The giant girl froze. "More come." "How many?" the rancher whispered. She listened, eyes narrowed. 5, maybe 6. The rancher's stomach dropped. "They'll surround the cabin." "Yes." Wind slammed the door shut behind the intruders. The storm swallowed all sound except the low hum of dread filling the room. The first man cradled his broken arm. "You're not worth the trouble, girl. But the buyer wants you alive, so alive you'll be." He pointed at her. "You're coming." She tightened her grip on the poker. "I stay." The second man sneered. "Then we drag you." The rancher stepped closer to her. "You're not alone." She glanced at him, just a flicker, but enough to soften her breath. Outside, more footsteps crunched. A lantern swung in the darkness. A deep voice called, "Bring her out. We're done waiting." The men inside smirked, confidence renewed. The rancher whispered, "What now?" She exhaled. "We run." "Into the storm?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "because the storm hides those who move fast." A heavy fist pounded on the cracked door. "Last chance. Bring her out, or we burn the cabin." The rancher's breath caught. Heat rose from the fireplace. Snow whipped against the window. The giant girl pointed to the back wall. "There is a way, through the storage room." He stared. "There's no door." "Not a door," she said. "A gap." "How do you know?" She didn't blink. "I felt the wind." Another voice outside shouted, "Torch it!" Flames crackled outside, small now, but growing. The rancher's heartbeat roared in his ears, and then the giant girl said, "Choose now. Stay and burn, or run with me." The rancher stared at the back wall, at the rough logs sealed with old clay and winter-dried mud. He had lived in this cabin half his life and never felt a draft there. Yet the giant Apache girl pressed her palm against it. eyes narrowing. "There," she whispered. "A seam." Another shout came from outside. "Light it!" The first flame licked the lower edge of the window. Smoke rose, thin but growing. The rancher grabbed her arm. "How do we get through?" "Break it," she said simply. "With what?" She turned to the splintered table leg he held. "That—" He swallowed. I don't know if I—" "You can," she said, steady and sure. She lifted the lantern from the floor. Its flame wavered in the draught. "The wind travels. The wall isn't solid." Outside, another voice boomed. "Torch the roof!" A roar of flame answered. The rancher raised the table leg and struck the wall. The sound vibrated through the cabin. Dust rained down, but the log barely budged. He struck again. "It's not moving." She stepped beside him. "Hit lower." He swung harder this time. A faint crack split the wood. "Again," she said. He struck until his arm shook, until sweat mingled with the smoke filling the room. Finally, the log split enough for her to wedge the iron poker into the gap. With a powerful twist, she forced the log outward. Snow blew inside through the opening. The rancher gasped. "You were right." "I listen," she said. "Now move." The smoke thickened. A flaming torch hit the side of the cabin, sending sparks through the broken doorway. One of the intruders inside cursed. "They'll burn us too if we stay here." The rancher coughed. "Go through the opening. I'll follow." "No," she said. "I go last." He shook his head. "You don't fit through fast." "I will," she replied. "But you first—" Another fist slammed the door. "Bring her out now." The rancher didn't argue again. He squeezed through the gap, boots sinking into deep snow on the other side. The cold hit him like a slap. Smoke trailed from the roof, glowing orange through the storm. "Hurry!" he called through the gap. The giant girl crouched and pulled herself through the opening. Her shoulders scraped the logs, her breath catching as she forced her way out. Snow fell from her hair as she emerged, and then a shout tore through the blizzard. There, behind the cabin, a man holding a torch stood only 20 paces away, flame hissing in the wind. The rancher froze. The girl whispered, "Move!" He grabbed her sleeve. "Which way?" "Downhill," she said. "Trees hide us." But the man ran toward them, waving the torch. "Found them," voices answered from the front of the cabin. "Circle around. Don't let them escape." The giant girl pushed the rancher forward. "Run!" He stumbled through the snow, lungs burning from the cold and smoke. Footsteps pounded behind them, heavy boots slicing through drifts. The rancher gasped. "They're gaining!" "Yes," she said, "because you look back." "I can't." "Don't look," she repeated. Torches glowed in the storm, blurry orange halos in the swirling snow. Shadows moved between them, 3 men, maybe 4. The rancher's foot slipped on ice. He fell hard, snow filling his collar. She grabbed his arm and pulled him up as if he weighed nothing. "You stay close," she said, "no matter what." A shout cut through the wind. "Stop right there." The rancher heard the crunch of boots growing louder. The men had split, coming from 2 sides. He whispered desperately, "We're trapped." She shook her head. "Not yet." She pulled him toward a cluster of trees where the storm thickened, hiding everything more than a few paces away. The wind howled, carrying the men's curses in fragments. "There! To the left! Don't lose them!" The rancher pressed his hand to his chest, struggling for breath. "I can't outrun them." "You don't need to," she said. "You only need one moment." "What moment?" She pushed him behind a thick pine trunk. "Silence." He held his breath. The men spread out in the storm, torches flickering wildly. Snow swallowed their shapes. One of them yelled, "Tracks end here." Another voice answered, "Then they're close." The girl leaned toward the rancher. Her voice was barely a breath. "They see footprints, but not shadows." He frowned. "What does that mean?" She didn't explain. Instead, she knelt, sweeping snow over the tracks with her forearm. Then she pressed her hand to his chest. "When they pass," she whispered, "we move deeper." He nodded, though his legs shook. A torch passed so close he could feel its heat through the tree. The man carrying it cursed into the wind. Where'd they go? The storm answered with a gust that nearly blew the flame out. Another voice shouted from the distance, "Check the ravine!" Boots scattered. The rancher whispered, "Did we lose them?" The giant girl listened, still, focused. Then her eyes sharpened. "No, she said. One stays." As the rancher turned, a shadow stepped out from behind another tree, silent, waiting, torchless, a man with a rope in his hands. And he wasn't looking at her. He was looking straight at the rancher. The rancher froze under the stranger's stare. Snow clung to his lashes. His breath came in sharp clouds that vanished as quickly as they formed. The man with the rope stood a few steps away. Boots sunk deep in the drift, shoulders relaxed like someone who knew this hunt was already finished. "Don't run," the man said calmly. "You'll only fall again." The rancher swallowed. "You're alone." The man gave a faint smile. "Alone is enough." The rope swung gently from his hand. Not fast, not threatening, like a promise. He was not big, not loud, but his eyes were cold and practiced. Behind the tree, the giant Apache girl shifted her weight. He could feel her presence like heat at his back. The rope man tilted his head. "She's behind you." The rancher's heart slammed. "She isn't yours." The man chuckled softly. "Boy, you don't even know who she is." The word boy stung, even though the rancher was far past youth. Still, he stood his ground. "She came to my door," he said. "That's enough." "That's nothing," the rope man replied. "She belongs to the buyer." The giant girl stepped out from behind the tree, snow crunching under her heavy boots. Even covered in ice and storm, she towered over both men. "I belong to no buyer," she said. The rope man's eyes gleamed. "There you are." His tone was smooth, almost polite. "You left a contract, broke a bond, that matters." "I broke chains," she answered, "not bonds." He shrugged. "Words change. Paper doesn't." "There's ink with your mark." The rancher frowned. "Her mark?" The rope man nodded. A thumb pressed in blood. Promise sealed. She agreed. Her jaw clenched. "I agreed to work, not to chains, not to hands." The rope man swung the loop once. Slow. "Buyer says otherwise." The rancher felt anger surge through his fear. "You can't own a person." The man gave him a lazy look. "Out here, you can own anything you pay for." The giant girl stepped closer to the rancher, placing herself slightly before him, shield-like. "You paid for lies," she said. The rope man's gaze sharpened. "We paid for strength, height, scars. You fit the list." He raised the rope. "He wants you back alive. I'm his patience." The rancher's voice shook. "He who—" The rope man ignored him. Instead, he looked at the rancher's boots, his worn coat, his shaking hands. "You're not a fighter," he said. "You're not paid. You're just a man who opened a door." He took a slow step forward. "Step aside, and you walk away breathing. Simple." The rancher's chest tightened. Snow bit into his ankles. Wind tore at his coat. He knew the man spoke the truth. He wasn't a fighter, hadn't thrown a punch in years, hadn't been anything more than a quiet shadow on his own land. But behind him stood the only person who had ever chosen his cabin as shelter, the only one who had looked at him and said he mattered, even without naming it. He shook his head. "No." The rope man sighed, as if tired. "Don't do this." "She knocked," the rancher said. "I opened. That means something." For a second, the rope man studied him, like a rare animal. Then his expression cooled. "Fine," he said. "You first." He flicked his wrist. The rope flew, quick, precise, a loop snapping through the air toward the rancher's shoulders. He didn't even have time to raise his arms. But the giant girl moved before the loop closed. Her hand shot up, catching the rope mid-air. The cord burned across her palm, but she held on, muscles straining beneath her wet blanket. The rope man's calm slipped for the first time. She yanked hard. He stumbled forward, losing footing on the ice. Snow sprayed around his boots. The rancher saw his chance and swung his arm on instinct, shoving the man's shoulder. The rope man fell to one knee. He snarled now, the politeness gone. "You don't know what you're doing." The rancher's voice shook, Maybe not, but I know right from wrong. The rope man tugged on the line, trying to pull it free from her grip. She tightened her hold until her knuckles whitened. You served him long enough, she said. You don't walk away clean, he hissed. I walk, she replied, and I don't walk alone. She snapped her wrist. The rope jerked from his hand and landed in the snow. Before he could reach for it, she stepped forward and planted her boot on it, grinding it into the ground. The man stared at her, breathing heavily. He'll come himself then. Let him, she said. The rancher's heart pounded. He couldn't quite believe what he'd just done, pushing a hunter, standing against men who carried contracts and torches. His whole life had been spent in the back rows, head down. Now he stood beside someone hunted, and somehow he wasn't hiding. The rope man rose slowly. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous calm. You think this is over? He asked. She shook her head. No, I think it begins. He glanced toward the glow behind them. Through the storm, the rancher saw the faint orange smear of his burning cabin licking at the sky. Your home's gone, the rope man said. So your animals, maybe? Your bed, your work? That buyer? His thin smile returned. He'll offer you coin to step aside next time. The rancher's throat tightened. I won't take it. Everyone takes something, the rope man replied. Food, coin, peace. Everyone breaks eventually. He backed away, eyes never leaving them. You have one night, maybe two. Then the buyer comes. He brings papers. Men. A badge that likes signatures. He nodded toward the burning glow. Enjoy the snow. Without another word, he turned and disappeared into the storm, footsteps swallowed by the wind. The rancher stared after him. He's leaving? For now, she said. He felt the loss of his cabin like a weight in his stomach. Everything I owned is there. She looked at the glow in the distance. You still own your feet, your breath, your choice. He let out a shaky laugh. Not much to show for 40 years. She turned to him, expression unreadable. You opened a door when others shut theirs. That is not small. The wind howled around them, harsher now. The storm thickened, cutting off the last clear view of the burning roof. Only a dull orange smear remained on the horizon. He hugged his coat, tight. Where do we go? She scanned the darkness. There is an old trail. Hunters used it once. Where does it lead? A cabin, she said. Near the ridge, not his. He frowned. How do you know that place? Her gaze drifted to the mountains. Because I ran before many times. He hesitated. Will he really come himself? Yes, she said. Men like him don't like losing what they think they own. He looked at the faint glow of his burning home one last time. Then we better not be here when he arrives. She nodded. Walk with me. He stepped beside her, boots sinking deep into the snow, heart heavy but strangely lighter than it had been in years. He had nothing now, no roof, no table, no bed. But for the first time, he wasn't walking alone. They turned toward the ridge and disappeared into the storm. Behind them, unseen through the white curtain of snow, a lone figure on horseback watched their shapes fade. The rider lifted a lantern, and on his coat, just beneath the collar, a small metal badge glinted in the firelight. The snow deepened as they climbed toward the ridge, their boots sinking past the ankles with every step. The storm swallowed sound, turning their breath into white ghosts drifting through the dark. The rancher hugged his thin coat close, teeth chattering despite his effort to hide it. The giant Apache girl walked beside him, steady and quiet, as if the cold barely touched her. After several minutes, she glanced at him. You're freezing. I'm fine, he lied. She stopped, unfastened the blanket from her shoulders and wrapped it around him. The fabric smelled of smoke and pine. He tried to give it back. You need this more, he said. I'm warm, she replied. You're soaked. I'm strong. He hesitated. I don't want you getting hurt. She looked at him with a strange softness. I've been hurt many winters. You need the blanket now. He lowered his head and accepted it. Thank you. She nodded once. Then her expression hardened as she scanned the tree line. Keep close. He sent riders. How do you know? Men like him move fast, she said, and the badge means more riders follow. What kind of badge was that? He asked. Authority, she said, but not honest. The rancher frowned. A lawman. A man who uses law for chains. Wind roared overhead, bending the tall pines until they groaned. The rancher shivered. How far is this place? "Half-mile," she said, "but the trail is narrow." He looked at the ridge rising ahead. "You've stayed there before?" "Only once," she said. "When I first ran." He stopped walking. "You ran from who?" She turned her head slightly. "From a man who claimed ownership." "The same buyer?" he asked. "No," she said. "Worse." He opened his mouth to ask more, but she lifted her hand, signaling silence. A faint crack echoed through the storm, distant but clear. A branch. A footstep. Something heavy, something deliberate. The rancher whispered, "What was that?" "Rider," she murmured. "Horse on ice." "How far?" She listened, eyes narrowing. Too close. A shadow crossed the ridge, a dark figure high above them, a horseman moving slowly, scanning the valley. The rancher's breath hitched. "He's watching us." "No," she said. "He's hunting our shape." "What shape?" "Two footprints," she said. "One set deeper." He looked down at the snow. His prints dragged, messy, uneven. Hers were lighter, despite her size. "He knows I'm slower," the rancher whispered. "He knows you're with me," she corrected. The rider paused at the ridgeline. A lantern swung from his saddle, casting long spider-leg shadows across the snow. The rancher ducked instinctively. "He'll see us." "Not if we move," she said. "Not if we break the trail." "How?" She took his hand. He stiffened, stunned. No one had ever held his hand before. Her grip was strong, warm despite the freezing wind. "This way," she said. She led him off the faint trail and into thicker trees. Branches scraped their coats, snow shook loose from every step. She stepped carefully, deliberately, weaving through fallen logs and thick brush. He whispered, "Why here?" "Tracks vanish in heavy branches," she replied. "Storm covers the rest." A distant voice echoed from above. "They dropped off the trail, spread out." The rancher's pulse spiked. "They know." "They guess," she said. "We move faster." She pulled him behind a boulder, the snow piled deep around its base. From here, they could see the faint glow of lanterns sweeping across the ridge. Another voice called, "Check the lower slope." The rancher leaned close. "They're everywhere." She studied the lantern light, her expression unreadable. "I know this buyer. He brings too many." He swallowed. "Why does he want you so badly?" She didn't speak for several seconds. Then, "Because he collects people." The rancher stared. "Collects?" "Yes." "What for?" "Strength," she said. "Work, fear, whatever he wants." The rancher felt sick. "You were forced to work for him." She nodded once. "And those men, they were returning you." She looked away. "Returning property." "You're not property," he said softly. Her eyes flicked to him, just a moment, but enough to ease her breath. "You speak like no one else." "You deserve freedom," he said. "Freedom costs," she whispered. Lantern lights shifted again, closer now. Snow crunched under multiple boots. The rancher ducked. "They're coming down the slope." "Yes," she said. "They're narrowing the circle." His voice trembled. "We can't outrun horses." "No," she said, "but horses can't climb the rocks." "What rocks?" She pointed to a jagged outcrop ahead, steep, sharp, half buried in snow. "Up there." "I can't climb that," he said. "You can," she replied, "because I'll lift you." "I'm too heavy." "You're not," she said. "You only think so." Another shout rang out. "I see movement." "Down by the pines." The rancher's heart nearly stopped. "They saw us." "No," she said. "They saw shadows." Boots thundered down the slope. She grabbed his coat with both hands. "Climb," she ordered. He grabbed the icy rock and struggled upward, boots slipping. She pushed his weight with surprising ease. His hands burned from cold stone, but he pulled himself up, inch by inch. "Faster," she said. "I'm trying." Below them, a lantern beam swept through the trees. A voice shouted, "Up there, I see them." The rancher gasped. "We're caught." "No," she said. "We jump over the ridge." "Jump?" Her eyes locked on his. "Trust me." The lantern glow grew brighter, men closing in fast. The wind howled. Snow stung their faces. And then she whispered the words that froze the rancher's breath. "He comes. The buyer. He's here." The rancher clung to the icy rock, breath tearing through his lungs. Snow blew sideways across the ridge, slicing at his face like knives. Below them, lanterns swayed in the darkness, circling, closing in, forming a slow ring of moving light. He whispered, "He's here, now." "Yes," she said. "He rides the dark." The rancher shivered. "How can you tell?" She didn't turn her head. She simply listened, jaw tight, shoulders stiff, her breath steady. His horse breathes heavy, and he brings metal. "Metal? Chains," she said. A deep clank echoed faintly. Not loud, just enough to chill the rancher's bones. He whispered, "Why chains?" "For runaways," she replied. He swallowed. "He thinks you're still his." "He thinks I'm anything he wants," she said. "That is his mistake." A lantern beam cut across the ridge, sweeping dangerously close. The rancher pressed himself against the rock. She placed her hand over his back, shielding him from the light. He whispered, "What do we do?" "Wait for the wind," she said. "What does that mean?" "When it hits hard, we move." He stared at her. "Move where?" She pointed toward a narrow slope beyond the ridge, nothing but a steep drop leading into darkness. "Down." "That's not a path," he said. "It becomes one if you fall right," she replied. He shook his head. "I don't fall right. I fall wrong." "You learn tonight," she said. Boots thudded closer. Voices rose through the storm. "Spread out. They're up there. Find the girl." The rancher's heart hammered. "They know. They guess," she whispered, "but guesses become truth if we freeze." A sudden wind gust roared across the ridge, strong enough to shake the branches below. Snow whipped upward like smoke from a fire. She grabbed his forearm. "Now." He hesitated. "Down there, that drop—" "Trust me," she said. He nodded weakly. "I do." "Even if I shouldn't." "You should," she replied. Another beam swept over the rocks, closer, brighter. She pulled him over the ridge. Their boots slipped. The slope rushed beneath them. Snow exploded around them as they half slid, half fell, tumbling fast. But she grabbed his coat, controlling the fall with raw strength. He crashed against a drift, coughing but alive. He gasped, "I'm okay, I think." "You are," she said. "Now move." They crawled behind a fallen tree. Lantern lights flickered above the ridge, confused voices shouting, "Where'd they go?" "They dropped off the side. They'll break their necks down there," she whispered. "Good." The rancher peered through the branches. "Why good?" "Because they fear the drop," she said. "Fear stops men faster than bullets." He nodded slowly. "And you don't fear it." "I fear only chains," she answered. A fourth lantern appeared at the ridge, held by a tall figure on horseback. The horse's breath steamed in the cold, rising like smoke around the rider's silhouette. The rancher's stomach knotted. "Is that him?" "Yes," she whispered. "The buyer." The rider said nothing. He simply stared into the storm, lantern held high. The wind bent around him, almost bowing. His coat snapped in the cold. Something metallic hung from his saddle, shackles glinting in the lantern glow. The rancher felt sick. "He looks different." "He is," she said. "He commands fear." "Why does he want you?" the rancher whispered. She didn't answer, not right away. Finally, she said, "Because I didn't break." He stared at her, stunned. "He tried to break you." "He broke many," she said, "but not me." High on the ridge, the buyer turned his horse. His voice rolled out like thunder. "Find them. Bring her alive. The man doesn't matter." The rancher flinched. He doesn't care if I die." "No," she said. "Men like him never care." The buyer lowered his lantern. The horse pawed the snow. A long moment passed, silent, heavy, before he spoke again. "She belongs to me." The words drifted through the storm like a curse. The rancher felt heat rise inside him, anger, fear, something he didn't recognize because he had never needed it before. "She belongs to no one," he whispered. The giant girl turned to him. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked shaken, not by fear but by the sound of his voice, like something inside him had changed. He cleared his throat. "What now?" "We move," she said, quiet and low. "Where?" She pointed north. "Down the ravine. The old cabin waits." "And then?" he asked. She hesitated. "Then I stand, and he falls." The rancher blinked. "You plan to face him?" "Yes." "You can't fight all his men." "Not all," she said. "Just him." "Why him?" "Because his men scatter when their master falls." He exhaled shakily. "And what about me?" "You live," she said. "You survive. But what if I can help?" She looked at him, long, searching. "You helped already." He shook his head. "I can do more." "You can," she said. "But first we reach the cabin." Voices above them screamed into the storm. "Tracks." "Down the slope." "They didn't die in the fall. Follow the prints." The rancher's heart dropped. "They found us." "Yes," she whispered, "because we left a trail." "I'm sorry," he said. "My steps are slow." "I don't blame you," she replied. "I changed the trail." She knelt in the snow and swept her hands across their tracks, erasing the deepest marks. Then she pointed to a narrow path hidden between boulders. "Through there." He crawled in beside her, the rocks scraping his coat. Behind them, lanterns descended the slope. Snow muffled their sounds, but not enough. A voice yelled, "I see them! Between the rocks!" The rancher froze. She grabbed his wrist. "Don't stop." He forced himself forward, then a gunshot cracked through the storm, striking the rock beside his head. Stone chips hit his cheek. Another shot fired. Then a third. He gasped. "They're shooting." "Yes," she said, "because the buyer tires of waiting." She looked over her shoulder, and her face went pale. "They brought the cart," she whispered. "The iron one." "The iron one." "For prisoners," she said softly, "and for those who don't return alive." The rancher's blood turned cold. The iron cart creaked through the storm, its wheels grinding against frozen earth. Even from a distance, the rancher heard the heavy chains dragging behind it, thick links meant for people, not animals. The sound sliced through the wind like a punishment bell. He whispered, "Why bring a cart for one person?" "Because he expects bodies," she replied. The rancher shuddered. "He kills." "He collects," she said. "Killing is easier." Gunfire cracked again, sparks snapping off the rocks near their heads. The rancher ducked low, snow stinging his face. The giant Apache girl grabbed his coat and pulled him deeper into the narrow gap between boulders. He gasped. "We're pinned." "No," she said. "We're angled." "Angled?" She touched the rock wall. "Wind blows across here. Snow falls sideways. Tracks hide fast." He swallowed. "But they're close." "That helps us," she said. "How?" he asked. "They expect fear, not thought." A lantern beam swept across the rocks, illuminating the snow in a pale glow. Voices echoed. "They're between the stones. Drive them out. Buyer wants her alive." The rancher's heart pounded so hard he feared they could hear it. She whispered, "Stay behind me." "I don't want you hurt." "I don't want you dead," she said. Another gunshot shook the air. The bullet ricocheted, whistling over their heads. The rancher flinched. She didn't. Then she pressed her hand to the rock again, feeling for something only she could sense. He whispered, "What are you doing?" "Listening," she said. "Stone carries sound." "What sound?" "Horses," she said. "3, moving wide." "Why wide?" he asked. "To trap us," she replied. "One from above, one from the side, one behind." He felt his stomach drop. "We're surrounded." "No," she said. "Almost." "Almost?" She pointed to a narrow crack between two huge slabs of rock, barely wide enough for a person. "What's there?" he asked. "Shelter," she said. "Short but deep. Will it hide us?" "Yes," she replied, "if you crawl." He blinked. "Me? You fit," she said. I widened the space. "How?" She jammed the iron poker between the stones and forced her weight against it. Ice fractured. Tiny flakes of rock fell away. The rancher protested. "You'll break your arms doing that." "I break stone," she said, "not arms." More gunfire erupted. Closer now. "Push her out. Fire into the gap. Don't hit the buyer's prize." The rancher ducked as a bullet struck the rock inches above his head. "They're shooting blind." "Yes," she said. "Blind kills too." The gap widened enough for him to slip through. She pointed. "Go." He hesitated. "Not without you." "I follow," she said. "Go now." He crawled into the darkness, squeezing between cold stone. Snow covered his sleeves. His breath fogged the narrow space. Behind him he heard her grunting softly as she forced herself through. But heavy boots crunched nearby, very close. "Check the rocks." Voices approached. She whispered sharply. "Move forward." He crawled faster. The space widened slightly, enough to crouch. She slipped in behind him, breath short but steady. He whispered, "They'll see the opening." "No," she said. "Storm hides it." "But the buyer." "He doesn't trust storms," she said. "He trusts fear." The rancher shuddered. "What does that mean?" "It means he's coming himself," she said. A faint metallic clink echoed through the rocks. The chains. Closer now. The buyer's silhouette appeared at the ridge above, lantern in hand. His horse snorted, steam rising in thick bursts. He spoke with a calm that froze the rancher's blood. "Girl, you can't hide." Her breath stiffened. She pressed her shoulder against the rock, trying to slip deeper into the shadows. The buyer continued, "Give yourself up. The man may live." The rancher felt his heart twist. "He wants you to surrender." "Yes." "And me?" "You are nothing to him," she whispered. The buyer raised his lantern higher, searching the rocks. "I found you once," he said. "I find you again." The rancher grabbed her arm. "Don't listen to him." She didn't respond. He whispered urgently, "You aren't his. You said so." Her voice trembled for the first time. "He marked me. Years ago." "Marked?" "With iron," she whispered. The rancher felt anger surge through him. "He hurt you." "He claimed me," she said quietly, "as property." "He can't claim you now." She didn't answer. Outside, the buyer's voice hardened. "I know your fear, girl. I know how you hide. I taught you that." The rancher felt her entire body go stiff. He whispered, "He tortured you." She looked at the floor. "He tried." He grabbed her hand. "You broke free." "Yes," she whispered, "but not enough." The buyer shifted in his saddle. "I hear breathing in those rocks." The rancher froze. She squeezed his hand. "Stay silent," she mouthed. Another boot crunched. Another lantern glowed. Another rider approached. They had no more time. The buyer lifted a chain and let it drop. The clang echoed through the rocks like thunder. Then he spoke. "Girl, if you don't come out, I take the man instead." The rancher's blood ran cold. Her breath caught, and the buyer leaned down in the saddle, pointing to the rocks. "Bring me his head." The rancher felt his breath stop. His head. The words echoed inside the narrow stone chamber like a death bell. Snow drifted in through a crack above them, cold flakes landing on his cheeks. But the cold wasn't what made him tremble. The giant Apache girl tightened her grip on his hand until his fingers hurt. He whispered, "Don't go out there." "I must." "No. He'll chain you." She shook her head. "He chains only fear." "And you're not afraid." She hesitated, just long enough for him to understand the truth. "He is my past," she whispered. "Past is a heavy chain." Above them, riders shifted. Boots crunched closer. One man called, "You want the head, sir?" "Yes," the buyer answered. "The girl will follow once she sees it." The rancher's stomach twisted. "He wants to break you." "He tried before," she said softly. "And if you go out, he wins. And if you stay—" She looked toward the sound of rattling metal. "He burns the rocks." The rancher frowned. "Burns?" "Smoke drives people out," she said. "Then chains." A torch dropped from above, flames hissing in the snow at the base of the rocks. The rancher gasped. "They're starting." "Yes," she said. "We move now." "Where?" She pointed deeper into the crack where the stones narrowed again. Through there. That space is tiny. You fit, she said. You won't, he argued. She didn't answer. She simply shoved her shoulders into the crushing gap, using her weight to widen it by sheer force. Stones scraped her skin. Frost cracked. A shower of ice rained down from above. He reached for her arm. You're hurting yourself. She pushed harder. Pain is not chains. Another torch dropped. Flames licked the snow, starting to smoke. Now, she ordered. The rancher crawled into the gap, feeling stone scrape his back. Snow clung to his sleeves, melting from his breath. His heart hammered so loud he feared they'd hear it. Behind him, she forced her body sideways into the space, barely fitting. Her breath came sharp and fast as rock pressed against her ribs and shoulders. He whispered, "Are you stuck?" "No," she muttered. "Not yet." Boots stomped on the stones above them. One man yelled, "They're under the ledge." Another replied, "Smoke them out." The rancher coughed as grey smoke drifted downward through cracks in the rock. She whispered, "Move faster." "I can't see." "Follow my hand." Her fingers brushed his ankle, guiding him forward. The darkness pressed close, thick and blind. Smoke hissed behind them. Sparks drifted down like fireflies. He whispered, "They're lighting more torches." "Yes," she said. "He grows angry." "Why angry now?" "Because he found resistance," she replied. "Buyers hate resistance." He crawled faster. "How much farther?" "Few more lengths," she said. "Then it widens." A bullet struck the rock above them. Stone chips rained down, biting his skin. He froze. "They're shooting into the cracks." "Yes," she whispered. "He tires of patience." Her hand pressed against his back. "Keep moving." "I'm scared." "I know." Her tone wasn't sharp. It was warm, steady, like a fire in winter. Then another bullet struck so close the sound rang in his bones. He scrambled forward, desperation giving speed. The crack widened, just enough to crouch. Fresh snow rested in the deeper hollow beyond, untouched by wind. He gasped, "A pocket!" "Yes," she said, pulling herself inside beside him. Smoke filled the narrow passage behind them. The rancher coughed hard. "We can't stay." "No," she said. "We go up." He looked up. "Up where?" She pointed to a slanted chimney of rock leading toward the surface, steep, narrow, slick with frost. "I can't climb that," he whispered. "Ah, you can," she said. "I lift." Boots thudded overhead again, smoke thickened. Lanterns glowed at the edges of the crack. A rider shouted, "I see movement inside." Another voice added, "Bring the chains." The rancher panicked. "They'll drag us out." "No," she said. "Not if we climb." He shook. "I'll fall." "I catch," she said. She crouched, bracing her hands under his boots. "Step. I'll crush you." "You won't." He hesitated, trembling, then placed one foot into her palm. She lifted him with shocking strength, pushing him toward the chimney. He grabbed the cold rock, fingers burning from the freeze. "Climb," she said. He pulled himself upward, legs shaking as she pushed. Smoke curled beneath him. Lantern light strobed through cracks. A man shouted, "They're in the chimney! Block the top!" The rancher gasped. "They know." "Yes," she said, "but they move slow." He climbed higher, heart pounding. She followed below, her strength forcing the narrow stone to stretch around her shoulders. Voices echoed above. "Cover the hole! Buyer wants them alive! Alive, not buried!" He reached the top and saw a thin opening, snow piled around it. He whispered, "It's closed." "No," she said below. "Push the snow." He shoved the powder aside with both arms, breaking through to the open air. Cold wind slapped his face. Snow swirled in the moonlit dark. "Hurry!" she called. He reached down. "Give me your hand." She stretched upward, and for a moment he thought she might make it. Then a chain dropped from above, hooked and ready, falling straight toward her wrist. Her eyes widened. The rancher screamed, "Watch out!" The metal struck the rock beside her, sparking. Men above shouted, "Catch her, pull her up." Another chain dropped. She looked up at him with calm fear. "Do not let go," she said. The rancher grabbed her arm with both hands, just as a pair of leather-gloved hands from above seized her other wrist. The rancher's grip tightened around her arm until his knuckles burned. Snow whipped across his face, blinding his eyes, but he refused to let go. Not now, not ever. Below him, the giant Apache girl dangled in the narrow chimney, one arm held by him, the other caught in the iron grasp of a man above. She groaned, torn between two forces. He shouted, "I've got you! Hold on!" "I am holding," she hissed, teeth clenched, but the man above tightened his grip and yanked hard. "Pull her up," another voice barked. "Buyer wants her alive." The rancher felt her arm jerk downward toward the chain man. He pulled back with everything he had. "Let her go," he shouted. The man above laughed. "She's not yours, friend." The rancher's arms trembled. "She's not yours either." "She was bought," the man replied. "Bought means owned." The girl growled, "No man owns me." The man jerked harder. "He will tonight." The rancher's breath choked. "I won't let them." "Then don't let go," she whispered. "I won't," he said. But she felt herself sliding toward the buyer's men. Her boots scraped rock. Her fingers slipped a little in his grip. He panicked. "I'm losing you." "No," she said. "You're not." But her voice trembled. A third man's face appeared at the hole above, eyes sharp, a chain wrapped around his wrist. "Hook her arm," he ordered. A chain swung down toward her shoulder. The rancher lunged forward, shielding her head with his arm. The chain struck his forearm with a crack. Pain shot up to his elbow, but he didn't let go. She gasped. "You're hurt." "Doesn't matter," he yelled. The man above snarled, "Chain the woman! Leave the idiot!" The rancher's chest burned with fury. "I'm not leaving!" She bent her knees against the narrow rock and pushed upward with brutal force. The man holding her wrist lost his balance and slipped to one knee. She gasped, "Pull now!" The rancher hauled her upward. Snow cascaded into the chimney. Her head rose toward the surface, but another chain flew down, looping around her ankle. She cried out as it tightened. The rancher screamed, "No!" The man above grinned, "Got her!" The chainman yanked hard, pulling her backward. Her body stretched between them, one arm in his hand, one ankle in theirs. She clenched her teeth. "Don't let me." He held tighter. "Never." The men above pulled again. Her body jerked downward. A sickening crack echoed from the rocks. She gasped sharply, pain ripping through her leg. The rancher nearly fell into the hole with her. "They're hurting you." "I know," she whispered. "Hold tight." "I can't pull against 3 men." "Yes," she said. "You can, because you aren't alone." She braced her free foot against the rock wall and pushed up again with every ounce of strength she had. The men above stumbled backward, dragged a step by her sheer power. The rancher heaved upward with a broken cry. Her shoulders rose above the rim. A boot swung toward her face, aiming to knock her out. She turned her head just in time. The kick missed and struck the rock. The rancher lunged forward, grabbing her other arm. "I've got both." Her chest rose over the rim. Snow flew around them in violent gusts. Below, the chain around her ankle tightened again as another man pulled. She groaned, "My leg!" "Pull," he begged. "Please, pull." She pushed up with her last strength. The chain slipped on the ice. For a heartbeat, it loosened, and she surged upward, bursting through the opening into the snow beside him, but the chain jerked tight once more. Her body was hauled backward. The rancher dove, grabbing her waist. "Don't go!" She clawed at the ice, fingers digging into snow. "Hold! Me!" He wrapped both arms around her, anchoring his feet against a boulder. The chain screeched against the rocks, sparks flying. The buyer's men shouted, "She's ours! Pull harder! Drag her down!" She slipped an inch, then another. "I can't! Hold!" She gasped. "Yes, you can!" he cried. Her fingers tore through the snow. Her legs trembled from the pain. Then her hand slipped. She slid backward into the hole. The rancher screamed and threw his full weight forward, grabbing her wrist at the last second. Their eyes locked. Her voice broke. "Don't let them take me." "I won't," he shouted. But the chain yanked hard, dragging both of them toward the opening. He dug his boots into the rock, muscles shaking so violently that tears froze on his lashes. "I can't lose you," he cried. A voice above thundered, "Pull her now!" The chain snapped taut, and the rancher felt his grip slipping from her wrist. Her eyes widened, her fingers opened, and the storm swallowed her scream. The rancher plunged forward into the hole, snow bursting around him as he reached desperately for her falling body. His hand scraped stone, then air, then finally, her sleeve. His fingers hooked the rough fabric just before she dropped deeper into the dark. "I've got you," he shouted, voice cracking. Her body swung from the chain in his grip, suspended halfway down the chimney. Below her, lantern light flickered, men waiting to drag her the moment she slipped. She gasped. "Your hand, hold tighter." "I won't lose you," he said, straining, but the chain tightened around her ankle like a living thing. The men below jerked it again. Her leg twisted painfully. She cried out, breath fogging the air. He slid another inch toward the hole. Her eyes widened. "Don't fall." "I won't," he promised. Even though the truth was obvious, he was losing ground fast. Voices below taunted them. "Drop her, old man. She belongs down here. Buyer wants his prize." The rancher's anger rose through the fear. "She's not your prize." One of the men laughed. "Then why fight? She's not yours either." The rancher gritted his teeth. "She chose my door, not yours." Her fingers reached upward, grabbing his sleeve. "Don't let go." "I'm here," he said. "I'm here." But the chain jerked again, and her sleeve tore a little, ripping under his fingers. Panic surged through him. He scrambled backward, bracing his boots against the rock, pulling with everything he had. She rose an inch, then another. Sparks flew from the chain below as the men cursed. "Pull harder! She's slipping!" "Don't let—" Her body rose higher. Her fingers found the rim of the rock. She dug into the icy edge with fierce determination. "Climb!" he shouted. "Climb with me," she growled through clenched teeth, pulling her weight upward despite the chain dragging her down. Her arms trembled, muscles burning under the strain. The rancher leaned back with all his strength. Almost there. She reached the rim again, just enough for him to hook his arm under her shoulder. With one final heave, he pulled her chest over the top. Snow exploded around them as she collapsed against him, panting hard. Her leg was still chained, but half her body was free. He held her close. "You're safe. I've got you now." She shook her head weakly. "Not safe. Not yet." Below, the men shouted in fury. "Pull her down." "She's almost out." "Chain's slipping." The rancher looked at her ankle. The chain was tight, cutting deep. Blood stained the snow around her boot. He grabbed the iron poker lying nearby. "I'll break it." "No," she said. "You can't. I have to try." She clamped a hand on his wrist. "Rock first. Break the hold." He understood. If he broke the rock edge where the chain bent, the chain might slip loose. He raised the poker and swung hard. Sparks flew. Rock chipped. The chain shifted slightly. Below, a man screamed, "Don't let them free her." Another jerk pulled her backward. She slid again toward the hole. She cried out, gripping his coat, "Hurry!" He swung again, harder. The poker rang like a bell. Stone cracked. The chain loosened, but not enough. He swung a third time, a fourth. Finally, crack. The rock split. The chain slipped. Her ankle jerked free. She gasped in relief, collapsing fully onto the snow above the chimney. But the rancher fell forward from the sudden release, hitting the ground beside her. Snow filled his mouth. He coughed and rolled over. She crawled toward him, grabbing his shoulders. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," he whispered. "You're free." She looked down at her bleeding ankle. "Free for now." Voices below erupted in rage. "She's loose." "They broke the rock." "Buyer will kill us," the rancher whispered. "What now?" She looked north, toward a faint line of trees barely visible through the storm. "We go. They can't climb fast." He nodded. "I'll help you walk." "You help me," she said, "and I help you." They rose together. She leaned on him, though she tried to hide the pain. He wrapped her arm over his shoulder, supporting her weight. A new sound cut through the storm, the deep, hollow blow of a horn. The rancher froze. "What's that?" Her breath caught. "Buyer calls his men." The horn sounded again, longer this time. Men shouted in response. "He's summoning the full hunt," she whispered. The rancher swallowed hard. "How many?" She listened to the echo. Too many, she said. He tightened his grip on her waist. We'll outrun them. She shook her head. We don't outrun this. We outthink it. How? She pointed to the narrow ridge ahead. The cabin. It has walls. We'll hide? No, she said. We stand. He hesitated. Against all of them? Not all, she said. Just him. A distant lantern appeared on the ridge. Slow, steady, controlled. The buyer on horseback. He was coming down the slope himself now. The rancher felt his blood run cold. He's heading straight for us. Yes, she said, because he knows we can't run far. She gripped his coat, pulling him close so he could hear her over the wind. He wants fear, she whispered, but we give him something else. What? He asked. She leaned her forehead to his. Fight. The horn blasted again, closer now. The buyer's voice carried through the storm. Bring me the girl. Kill the man. The rancher felt her hand tighten around his, and in that moment, with the storm shaking the world, she whispered the words that split his chest wide open. You are not nothing. You stand with me. Lanterns surrounded the ridge. The buyer raised his chain, and the storm fell silent. The storm thrashed around them, ripping snow sideways as the buyer rode slowly down the ridge, lanterns swinging from his saddle. The flame barely moved. It burned straight, steady, like a lighthouse in a world of white. The rancher felt the chill in his bones. Men like him didn't fear storms. Storms feared them. The buyer halted 10 paces away. His horse snorted clouds of steam. His coat flapped behind him like a dark wing. Chains hung from the saddle, clinking softly in the wind. He looked down at the rancher and the giant Apache girl leaning on him. You run well, the buyer said. His voice was calm, too calm. She straightened despite her injured ankle. I didn't run. I left. That's the same thing, he replied. No, she said. Running is fear. Leaving is choice. The buyer smiled faintly. You don't have choices. The rancher stepped forward, placing himself between them. His hands shook, but his jaw locked tight. She does, he said. For the first time, the buyer looked directly at him. His eyes were unreadable, like cold glass. You speak for her now. I speak for what's right. The buyer tilted his head. And who taught you right? A cabin full of dust, a lonely life, a woman who needed shelter for one night. The rancher didn't waver. She's not your property. She was bought, the buyer said, and returns to me. She doesn't return, the rancher said. The buyer's smile widened, not warmth, but mockery. Do you think she cares for you? Do you think she stays for your courage? The rancher swallowed hard. I don't know what she feels. The girl stepped closer. He feels what you never could. The buyer turned his gaze toward her. And what is that? Respect, she said. Something chains can't buy. A low murmur rippled through the buyer's men. The buyer ignored them. Instead, he slowly dismounted, boots sinking into the snow with a soft crunch. He unhooked a chain from his saddle, letting it hang at his side like a serpent waiting to strike. You give him too much credit, the buyer said. He is a nobody. The rancher flinched, but the girl didn't. He opened a door, she said. Something you never learned to do. The buyer snapped the chain upward. I open doors with force. And that is why you lose, she said. He took a step forward. You speak boldly for someone who limps. The rancher's anger burst forward. Don't talk to her like that. The buyer didn't even look at him. Quiet, weakling. I'm not weak, the rancher said. The buyer turned his head slowly. You are a man who lived 40 years without being touched, 40 years without being chosen, 40 years unseen. You are nothing. A knife of shame stabbed deep, but the girl placed her hand on the rancher's arm. You are not nothing, she whispered. You stood. The rancher swallowed hard. I'm standing still. The buyer snorted. Standing means nothing. Only strength decides. You think strength is chains? She asked. Chains keep order, he replied. Chains keep people in place. Then break me, she said. The rancher's breath caught. Don't go to him. I'm not going, she whispered. I'm drawing. Drawing what? His eyes, she said quietly. His attention. The buyer lifted the chain. Come back to me, girl. She straightened. I'm not your girl. You were bought, the buyer said. I was taken, she corrected, and I walk free. She stepped forward, putting her body between the rancher and the buyer, a bold gesture, a dangerous one. The buyer flicked the chain like a whip. You walk nowhere. She held her ground. Then strike, the rancher whispered. Don't provoke him. I must, she said. The buyer swung the chain. It cut through the air like lightning. She blocked it with her forearm, the metal wrapping around her skin, biting deep. She didn't scream. The buyer jerked the chain, trying to pull her off balance. She locked her knees and held her ground. He narrowed his eyes. Still strong. Good. He yanked again, harder. She staggered a step. The rancher rushed forward. Let her go. The buyer lashed the chain outward, knocking the rancher back into the snow. He hit the ground with a painful thud. Stay down, the buyer commanded. But the rancher rose again, breath heaving. She saw him stand, and something in her eyes changed. Strength, fire, resolve. The buyer pulled the chain tight. Kneel, girl, she growled under her breath. I kneel to no man. He stepped closer, chain taut. Then break. She braced herself. The rancher lunged. He grabbed the chain from behind, wrapping it around his own hands to pull it away from her arm. The buyer turned sharply. You again? I won't let you hurt her, the rancher said. You can't stop me. I can try. He pulled the chain with all his strength. The girl pulled too, using the buyer's surprise against him. Together, their force shifted the balance. For a moment, the buyer slipped on the icy ground. Just an inch, just a second. But enough. She ripped her arm free, swinging her elbow into the buyer's jaw. The crack echoed like a snapped branch in a silent forest. The buyer stumbled backward, stunned. The rancher gasped, You hit him! She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The buyer wiped the blood from his lip and smiled. You shouldn't have done that, he said quietly. He reached into his coat. The rancher tensed. What's he? The buyer pulled out a small iron device, 2 jagged hooks connected by a leather strap. A restraining tool, a braking tool. She froze. No. Yes, the buyer said. You remember this. The rancher stepped in front of her. Stay back. But the buyer raised the hooks and whispered, She kneels tonight. The girl whispered to the rancher, voice breaking for the first time. Do not die for me. He shook his head. I'm not dying. Then what are you doing? Standing, he said. The buyer moved, and 6 riders closed in from behind them, forming a deadly circle of lanterns, chains, and rifles. The girl grabbed the rancher's shirt. Stay behind me, she whispered. No, he said. I stay with you. The buyer raised the hooks. Snow whipped across the ridge. Lanterns shook in the wind. Men aimed rifles. And the giant Apache girl stepped forward, ready to break or be broken. As the buyer whispered, It ends now. The storm howled across the ridge as the buyer raised the iron hooks higher, their jagged tips gleaming in the lantern light. The circle of riders tightened, rifles lifted, breath steaming in the cold air. The rancher felt the weight of a dozen guns settle on him, but he didn't step back. He stood beside the giant Apache girl, shoulder to shoulder, heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear the wind. The buyer took 1 step forward, then another. You had your chase, the buyer said. Now the running ends. She lowered her stance, 1 leg bent despite the wound at her ankle, then let it end. You kneel first, the buyer said. I've never knelt, she replied. Not for you. Not for chains. The buyer nodded once, almost respectfully. Then I break your legs. The rancher stepped in front of her again. You'll break me first. The riders laughed, a harsh sound swallowed by the wind. The buyer's eyes narrowed. You still stand? Yes, the rancher said, because she deserves someone who stands. The buyer lifted the hooks. Then you die first. Before the man could strike, the girl grabbed the rancher's coat and yanked him behind her with surprising strength. Stay close, she whispered. And stay low. The buyer lunged, swinging the hooks at her face. She ducked beneath the metal, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. The crack that followed echoed through the valley. The buyer snarled and swung with his free hand, slashing the air inches from her cheek. The riders shouted, "Hold her! Take the man! Don't let her break him!" The rancher tried to rush forward, but she slammed her hand against his chest, forcing him back. "Don't," she said. "He aims for you. He'll kill you. I don't break," she growled. The buyer recovered fast, too fast. He swept her injured leg with a boot. She stumbled, dropping to one knee. The hooks flashed again, cutting the air toward her throat. The rancher tackled the buyer's side with every ounce of strength left in him. The buyer crashed into the snow, hooks flying from his hand. The riders gasped as the lantern light flickered. The buyer roared, "Kill him!" Rifles cocked. The girl rose in one fluid motion and pulled the rancher behind a boulder as bullets exploded through the air, striking stone and snow. She pressed his head down with her hand. "Stay down," she barked. He coughed, chest shaking. "I tried." "You stood," she said. "That is enough." More gunfire tore past them. The buyer screamed above the rifles, voice thick with rage. "Bring me the girl! Bring me the coward!" The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. "He doesn't understand you." The rancher swallowed. "What does he think?" "That you fear him," she said. "But fear is not weakness." "Then what is?" "Obeying him," she said. Another lantern approached. A rider rounded the boulder. He raised his rifle. She moved first. Her hand shot up, grabbing the rifle barrel and wrenching it sideways. The shot fired into the sky as she slammed the rider to the ground. Snow exploded around them. "Take his gun," she ordered. The rancher grabbed the rifle with shaking hands. "I've never—" "You point," she said. "You don't have to fire." He pointed it anyway. The rider froze. The buyer screamed from the ridge. "Coward! You dare fight me! You!" The rancher's fear burned away into anger. "She isn't yours." The buyer lifted another chain from the snow. "You think she stays because of you? She stays because she needs protection. And you have none." "She doesn't need protection," the rancher said. "She needs choice." The buyer paused, just long enough for doubt to flicker through the ranks of his men. Then he roared, "Take them both!" The riders surged forward. The rancher aimed the rifle at the buyer, not shaking now, not stepping back. The girl stood beside him, taller than the storm, eyes blazing with fire and pain and unbroken will. "Together," she whispered. "Together," he said. The first rider charged. She struck him with the rifle butt, sending him crashing into the snow. Another rushed from the left. She pivoted, sweeping his legs with her forearm. A third aimed a gun at the rancher. She shoved him aside. The bullet hit the rock behind them. The buyer watched, fury burning in his eyes. "She's mine!" he screamed. "No!" the rancher said, stepping forward. "She's her own!" The girl placed her hand over the rancher's, steadying his aim. Their voices merged in the freezing air. "We stand." The buyer raised his chain, and every lantern around them went dark at once, snuffed out by a sudden blast of wind. The storm roared. The ridge shook. And through the darkness, a new sound rose. The distant thunder of more riders approaching. Bigger, fiercer. Not the buyer's men. The girl's breath caught. "My people," she whispered. "They found me." The rancher stared at her. "Your people?" She nodded. "The ones he stole me from. They tracked the storm." The buyer stepped back, panic flickering in his eyes for the first time. "No," he whispered, "not them." The thunder grew louder, closer. The girl took the rancher's hand. "Stand with me," she said softly. "I will," he said. Horses burst through the snow. Shadows rose behind them, tall, silent, unstoppable. The buyer raised his chain for one last strike, and the world exploded into motion. If you enjoyed this story and want to experience more unforgettable journeys across the old frontier, filled with danger, longing, and fierce courage, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter. Each week, we bring you powerful tales of heart, hope, and the wild lands where ordinary people rise to extraordinary moments. Your support helps us create deeper stories, richer worlds, and characters who stay with you long after the final scene. So saddle up, join our growing community, and ride with us into the next adventure. Your story continues just over the horizon.